How did I go from using the iPhone 15 Pro Max to using the iPhone SE 2016? Now, I've been on a journey to live a more digitally minimalistic life, and that life includes changing my smartphone. I was extremely addicted to social media and using my smartphone in general. I used to use it 8 to 10 hours a day. Now, when I switched to living a more digitally minimalistic lifestyle, I thought that I had to leave all smartphones behind and just use a quote-unquote dumb phone. When I first switched, I used a Nokia 6300 4G, and then once I got slowly acclimated and stopped using social media, I realized that I can use any phone as a dumb phone, at least in theory. Last month, I left the Apple ecosystem. I was done. I didn't want to be part of it. I didn't see any benefits to it. But now that I've taken a step back, I realize that a lot of people can't leave the Apple ecosystem. They have their family members who are connected to it. They follow their children's usage of social media and their phones through it. And I understand that. Not everyone can use every device. So I wanted to make some content targeted at those who want to stay in the Apple ecosystem, but also don't want to be addicted to their phone anymore. When I had my previous iPhones, the iPhone 15 Pro Max, as well as the iPhone 12 mini, I tried to convert these smartphones into a dumb phone by downloading applications or widgets to hide all my apps, and to be honest, it didn't work. I don't think it was a software issue as much as it was a hardware issue. Newer iPhones are beautiful. The screens are great. They're just so enticing. Even if you switch off all the colors and put on grayscale, you just want to pick up the device and look at it. So I found a solution to solve this issue. You have to go back in time a little bit. So recently I invested in an iPhone SE 2016. I know it's dated, I know that nobody wants to use these anymore, and that's why it's kind of the perfect dumb phone, especially for those of you who want to stay in the Apple ecosystem. The iPhone SE from 2016 has a 4-inch display. Recently, I've been using the BlackBerry Classic and Q10, and the BlackBerry Classic has a 3.5-inch display, so I was quite shocked to see that this phone only had a 4-inch display, and when I compared them side by side, it almost feels like the iPhone is a bit smaller. I know it's thinner, and lengthwise they're more or less the same, but the major difference I noticed with the iPhone SE, especially to newer iPhone models, is the weight. It's super light. I mean, I know this is because of the battery, but it feels like you have nothing in your pocket sometimes. This model comes with memory from 16 gigabytes all the way to 128. The model that I have here is 16 gigabytes. It also has the A9 chip, and honestly, it works great. I don't notice any lag, but I do have it set up as a dumb phone, and we'll get a little bit more into that. The rear-facing camera is 12 megapixel, which is great for sharing photos, and honestly, it has a 4K 30 frames per second video as well, so this is not bad for a phone that is 8 years old. Now, when this model came out, it came out with iOS 11, but this model has updated all the way up until iOS 15. This is the one good thing about Apple iPhones. They support their iPhones for quite a long time. iOS 15 works great. You can download all the apps that you could need. Sure, you might not have the fastest experience with this older device. It only has 4 gigs of RAM, I believe, and honestly, you don't need it if you're going to set it up as a dumb phone. Now, why would I use this phone in 2024? Well, if you're someone who's attached to the Apple ecosystem, you'll have Apple Pay. You'll have the NFC feature, which is great for those of you using, for example, transport passes on your device. And with this model specifically, I chose it because it had a headphone jack. I love listening to music, and I still like wired headphones. Why did I choose this phone as a dumb phone? I know that you can make any smartphone a dumb phone, especially in the Apple ecosystem. But like I said before, Apple iPhones are just enticing. If you go back to an older iPhone, for example, with a home button and a fingerprint sensor and all of the physical buttons, this kind of takes you back in time. And as somebody who is visually impaired, the more buttons, the better for me. I also chose this device because of its small screen size. As somebody who's visually impaired, I avoid small screens. I really have a difficulty seeing, reading, and it's not very inviting for content. I don't want to watch any videos on it, and therefore this device is the perfect dumb phone for me. Now, how did I make the iPhone SE 2016 into a dumb phone? Now, out of the box, Apple comes with a lot of stock applications. If you're going to set this up as a dumb phone, remove all the applications possible. And when you think you've removed enough, keep removing some more. I removed every app possible except for the default apps that it wouldn't let me remove. And those apps I removed from the home screen. I removed every app from the home screen. I wanted my home screen as clean and as least tempting as possible. Now on my home screen, I actually put one widget, and this is the screen time widget. I wanted a reminder if I open my device of why not to use my device. And whenever I see this widget and the time going up, I automatically put the device down. Since I've added this widget and this setup, I've only used the device about 20 minutes a day, so it seems to be working quite well. I installed only 2 applications that were on this device, so that way it was more usable for me. A lot of you have reached out about a device that has specific communication applications, especially those of us living outside the US. We all use WhatsApp, and you can put WhatsApp on this phone, so it works perfectly. So I installed WhatsApp, and I also installed YouTube Studio, so that way I can keep an eye on comments. I did not install YouTube itself. I didn't install any social media. So this phone is great. There's no distractions, and I also didn't install emails. I found that my emails are quite distracting. I already have them on my tablet and on my computer, so I don't need my emails everywhere all the time. Another way I set up this phone as a dumb phone is by changing the wallpaper to black. Just black. No picture, nothing distracting to look at. And going a step further, I changed the colors to grayscale. Now this might not be for everybody, but this is a great way to make your apps less enticing to click on. It can make things a bit more difficult to see, especially if you're used to using color to distinguish your navigation. But I'm somebody who's already a bit colorblind, so making it grayscale actually makes it easier for me, and I can just focus on the contrast of the text, for example. So when I switched it to grayscale with a black background and removed all the apps, this is a pretty dumb phone. I mean, look at my home screen. If I want to go into my app drawer, I only have some basic apps, and there's no games, there's no social media, there's no email, there's nothing to distract me really. Honestly, it's so boring, I haven't even gone in here. Most of the times I go in here just to access the settings. That's it. So all in all, I think this is a great dumb phone setup for the iPhone SE 2016, and it seems to be working. I hate to say it, but I think I've reduced my screen time to as much as possible. 20 minutes a day is the lowest I've ever been. I went from somebody who was 8 to 10 hours a day on my previous iPhones. I have implemented other hacks in my life to reduce my digital footprint or to reduce my device usage by separating my devices by applications. So I didn't get to this process overnight, and it took about 8 or 9 months to get to this point. But now that I'm at this point, I can use any smartphone as a dumb phone, and that makes me really appreciative, especially if you have any old smartphones lying around. And this iPhone is a great example for somebody who can't leave their ecosystem but still wants to be a digital minimalist. Now, what's my experience been with this device? A big question I get is the battery life. Now, I got this device refurbished and the battery was replaced. I paid £29 for this device and £10 for shipping. So all in all, it cost about £39. I got this phone shipped from the UK to France, and it works great. The battery has outstanding standby life. I've only charged it once, and after 3 days of just using it about 20 minutes a day, it was at 56% battery life. So all in all, it holds up just like any other dumb phone that I have. I find that Apple has a reputation for poor battery life, but that's because a lot of people use it for entertainment and playing games and spending a lot of time reading or listening to music with Bluetooth and using a lot of features that drain the battery. If you use it like a dumb phone, it lasts just as long as other dumb phones. Maybe not as long as an e-ink device, but I mean, come on, let's be reasonable. Another advantage of this device is its size. I mean, look at it compared to my BlackBerry Classic. I was shocked to find that it was almost a little bit smaller. Yes, the screen is larger, but there's no physical keyboard and the device is quite slim and, notably, very light. You can put it in your pocket and more or less forget about it for the day. Another major advantage, again, is the Apple ecosystem as far as Apple Pay is concerned. I'm somebody who doesn't want to take their whole wallet with them when they're going somewhere, so adding a couple cards or even my transport card could be very useful. A downside to using this device as a dumb phone is I wouldn't recommend it for somebody who is truly addicted or just starting their digital minimalism journey, unless you know you can go without certain applications without temptations. Now, when I first started my digital minimalism journey, I would not be able to use this as a dumb phone because I was super addicted and I had extreme FOMO, or fear of missing out, for social media. And even if I removed my apps, I know that I would later re-download them or even access them via browser. So it took me a long time to break my social media addiction before I was able to use any phone as a dumb phone. Now I can safely say that this device works great as a dumb phone, and I'm not tempted to access social media because I haven't used social media for months. Now, comparing this to other dumb phones that I've used, for example, I've used the Punked MP01, which is a minimal dumb phone. I think that phone is the least distracting phone I've ever used, and it was a great crutch when I first switched to digital minimalism because there was no possibility of downloading apps, even communication apps. So I just had calls and texting, and I found that this phone was great when I first migrated more or less away from social media. I also used the Nokia 6300 4G, and then I slowly switched to other devices. I mean, I've been primarily using BlackBerry for the past couple months, my BlackBerry Q10, for example, and that phone does have a couple ways to access YouTube, for example, but more or less I don't use it to access anything. I like it because it's the perfect music player and it's just easy to fit in the pocket and use the physical keyboard to type. One major downside I found with the iPhone is the inability to add an external memory card. I have a 16 gigabyte memory. I mean, it's enough for a dumb phone. I don't need to install extra apps. I'm not using it for photos or videos, but it's extremely limiting if you want to add a lot of music. And the only way to add music was to actually download iTunes, which I haven't done since 2010 for my iPod. I did download it and I added some songs and it took up a lot of the memory, but that's all I'm going to be using the memory for anyway as a dumb phone, so it wasn't such a big deal, just something to note. So in conclusion, I found that using the iPhone SE from 2016 is actually one of the best dumb phones that I've used recently. Especially for people who are in the Apple ecosystem, this is a viable option. If you're somebody who knows that you will use your newer iPhone, look back in your drawer and see if you have some more lying around. A lot of people have old phones, and I think this is a great option to switch to a more digitally minimalistic lifestyle. I know myself, I had my Motorola Razr, I have a lot of Blackberries, and some Samsungs that I definitely will get around to trying as well. I think it's a great idea to go back in time to get back some time in your life. Would you go back to using an older phone? Which one would you choose? Thank you again so much for watching, and see you soon.